This is podcast 23 of the Discipleship Directives with Dr. Dan Crawford. He is the founder of DiscipleAllNations.org. I am your host, and I want to thank you for being with us today. Dr. Crawford, in addition to being the president and the founder of DiscipleAllNations.org, is also a senior professor emeritus for the Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. Dr. Crawford, we are back. Thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm having a great day.
Well, that is always good news, sir. And thank you for being with us today, Dr. Crawford. It's always a pleasure to spend time together. And as we have been on a roll within the last few podcasts, we're back with a special guest. And this morning, as we get to dialogue over discipleship and spiritual formation, and just those components that make a disciple and grows into discipleship, I'm always excited that we're able to bring people that you have known for years. So this morning is no exception. And Dr. Crawford, I'd love for you to introduce our guest today.
I'll be glad to. Our guest today is Mickey Ewing, and I met Mickey when he was a freshman in college. That was Pan American University. It may have been Pan American College. The year you started, Mickey. Anyway, we met then. He was involved in Baptist student ministry. I was the director of the Baptist student ministry at Pan American, and have enjoyed keeping up with him through the years. Was a part of his ordination service into the ministry, and he may want to tell you the rest of that story, but I forgot to sign his ordination papers. So he was illegal for a long time until he caught up with me, and I actually signed his ordination papers. But glad to have him with us this morning.
Good to be here, Dr. Dan. If I slip and forget to call you Dr. Crawford and just refer to you as Dan, it's because when I first knew you, you had your Bachelor of Divinity, and
I just barely had that. Yeah, I barely had that, and the grades weren't all that good either.
It had been a while back.
Thank you for being with us, brother. Every time that we gather for podcast, and we enjoy just having conversations over, again, discipleship and spiritual formation. Just for the two of you guys going back into college, why don't you give us a quick update? What you've been up to? What's ministry for you these days? And just help us get to know you a little bit better, Mickey.
Sure. I just recently retired after 50 years in ministry that started at a church you may know pretty well. That was First Baptist Church Spar, where I served part-time on staff there for a year, my freshman year at Pan American, and followed that up with about 4 years at Conway Avenue Baptist Church over in Mission before moving to Northside Baptist Church in Victoria, where we served for 44 years as first student minister and worship leader, and eventually as associate pastor at Northside. So it's been a good run.
Oh my goodness. This is crazy. I got the privilege to pastor First Baptist FAR from 2013 to 2 years ago. Yeah, 2019, 20.
Well, I got there a little bit ahead of you then.
Yeah, just a little bit. But thank you for your work, because obviously, as we know, we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. So hopefully we can be found as faithful as you guys, both of you guys in your ministry, Dr. Crawford and yourself. And congratulations on the retirement.
Thank you. I'm loving it.
Great news. Dr. Crawford, speaking of retirement and speaking of coming into an end of a service, whatever the case may be in life, it's always in the context of community. It's always in the context of walking together. A few weeks ago, when you came down to South Texas, Dr. Crawford, as you do on a monthly basis to train pastors in partnership with Pastor Robert Rodriguez and Valley Baptist Ministry Education Center, you came down and you spoke of Hebrews 12, verses 1 through 2. And this is when we want to engage into the conversation, Mickey, with Dr. Crawford over this principle. And here's the principle. You mentioned the benefits of running the race together. I'd love for you, Dr. Crawford, to take us into possibly either expanding on the idea or help us see what you meant, a couple of weeks ago in South Texas.
Well, from the biblical perspective, that passage says that the writer of Hebrews, was encompassed about with this great cloud of witnesses. And I deducted from that it wasn't a long race. It wasn't a marathon. It was around a track. Where encompass means like a compass, northeast, south, and west. And so the race is round and around and around. In other words, we run together. So we run alongside of people and encourage them, and we run and are encouraged by other people. And in my own ministry, my first stop out of the seminary was the Rio Grande Valley in Pan American. There was a director of missions there at the time, James Hatley, who ran with me.
Great.
We became great friends. In fact, I was honored and privileged to preach his funeral service several years ago. But we ran together on that race. And then everywhere I went, there was somebody that seemingly God put there to run alongside me, to run with me. There were obviously people that I got to run with that I could encourage along the way. But I moved on from Pan Am and eventually landed at the University of Texas for 6 years. And my greatest partner on the race was the Baptist student minister at Texas A&M. And people found that hilarious that the director at the University of Texas and the director at A&M would even be friends. But we were great friends. And he would call, and his name was Ron Wells. He had a deep bass voice, sounded a little bit like what I think God may sound like. But he would call, and he'd just call out my name, and he'd start out. He'd say, how long's it been since you witnessed anybody? How are you and your wife doing? I mean, he just would ask me these accountability questions that nobody else was asking me, but I loved every minute of it. I would do him the same way, and we just had a great relationship. So running the race, as the writer of Hebrews tells us, there are a lot of unique little things in that passage, but I love the part where we're running together. We are encompassed about, meaning they're all around us, and we're running together.
Whether it's in the book of Hebrews or any other reference, when it comes to running together and in that race, you reminded me just listening to, especially as you take us back into those early years, that when it comes to this togetherness, one of the uniqueness and distinctiveness, and Mikey, I want to ask you this question. One of the uniqueness and distinctiveness of following Christ is that we don't have to run with others, is that we get to run with others. Is that predisposition of self-centeredness have been transformed and changed now into a desire, not only to pursue Jesus and to walk with Christ, but also with his bride, which in your case, brother, retiring recently, I just want to ask you, how do you, listening to the explanation of this Hebrews passage, chapter 12, verses 1 through 2, how do you make the connection of your personal journey and running with others in your pastoral ministry, whether it was at first Far and then Conway, which, by the way, Conway Avenue, it's only 2 blocks from, I'm recording from home. So I live in Mission, so I'm just right around the corner from Conway Avenue, by the way.
Some good folks there too.
Good folks, definitely. And now you're coming out of, pastoral ministry in Victoria. Did you say 44 years?
44 years. And when you talk about running the race, what that means to me is being alongside others from generation to generation, that you're to marry people who are the children of people that you've married, and you serve with them for years at a time, and develop relationships that you can't do in first couple of years at a church with a congregation. But the relationships you develop over time, you can lean on folks, who you can depend on, and who you can count on when you're running the race together.
Wow, definitely. I want to ask you, the two of you guys, because once again, I'm just imagining and picturing the imagery of the running together. Would you guys say that the running together, and whether it's ministerially, whether it's vocationally, career-wise, obviously family-wise, would you say that they're running together at the same time, and it's kind of the two sides of the same coin, also brings or creates a sense of vulnerability. And I'm using the word vulnerability because ministry in particular has those ups and downs. And sometimes that running together can be risky, can be difficult and challenging, whether it's self-inflicted, whether it's inflicted by someone else, coming out of COVID, a few years ago and things like that. So I'll just open up to Dr. Crawford. I love for you to maybe interact with us here. What do you do when the running gets rough and tough and is difficult?
Well, I had a lecture that I used in my seminary classes with my wannabe preachers and soon-to-be preachers, entitled "The Ministerial Seatbelt." When you enter the ministry, you fasten your seatbelt because there are going to be people that want to knock you off your pedestal, and that's the importance of people running along with you. There were days that I would call my co-runners, my fellow runners, my friends, and say, this is tough. I'm having a tough spell here, and sometimes they would give me answers, and sometimes they would encourage me, and sometimes they would just say, well, all I know to do is pray for you. And I said, well, I can't avoid that. You need to pray for me. Come on. So yeah, I've never stayed anywhere 44 years in one spot. So Mickey's probably got some stories of how people treated.
I never said the 44 years was easy. In any church, you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have bumps along the way. And that's where running alongside those that you can count on really matters, because they're the very ones that'll come. God sends them just at the right time to give you a word of encouragement, or like you say, just put their hand on your shoulder and pray for you, help you to maintain the strength that it takes to, with dignity, carry on for 44 years in one place and minister to folks that are not always happy with you. So that's where running the race together.
Wonderful. Yeah. So especially as you retired recently after 44 years 44 years at this church, but you said 50 total, right? That's what you said.
50.
Help us take us back into the beginning of those years, because you spoke of earlier at First Baptist Far, beginning that, responding to that calling, but obviously those foundational years at the BSU, Baptist Student Ministry, that's where you met Dr. Crawford, which he wasn't doctor back then, as you said, but yet the seal, the calling, the environment. Take us back into those. What do you remember? Where is it that, how is it that God utilized those years as now you're looking back after 50 years of that journey?
Oh, it's easy to remember the times in my life that were pivotal moments. I grew up at Calvary Baptist Church in McAllen, and it was there that I surrendered to ministry. I knew that God had called me to ministry, and by the time I got to Pan American and Dr. Crawford, I was on my way. I had a course before me, and I found Dr. Crawford's door was always open. I valued his wisdom and counsel as an older mentor, because he was at least, 25, 26? Yeah. And I had opted out of the Greek fraternity life. I had gone to one of their rushes and knew that lifestyle was not for me if I was going to follow the Lord's direction in ministry. And so the Baptist Student Center became my social hub. It became the center of my social life when I was at the university. And it provided me a lot of opportunities under Dan's leadership. I was trained in leadership. He made sure that we got to places like the BSU's Leadership Training Conference, and provided opportunities for service, like serving as president of that BSU, now the BSM. We did youth-led revivals. I directed BSU folk singing group that went around the area doing church banquets and spring break tour to other campuses and ski resorts. Tough life. And even served as a Texas Baptist State summer missionary, where I served at Surfside in the beach ministry there. We'd do singing at the coffee house every night, and then every day we'd go out and be hippies evangelizing folks on the beach. So coffee singers by night and hippie evangelists by day. It was a good deal.
That's right. That's right. Well, we spoke about this about 2 podcasts ago, that we are recording just a few weeks from spring break and Beach Reach. Thousands of students will come down to South Padre Island here in the border, and our BSM ministry, Baptist Student Ministry, will come up and serve, sharing the gospel of Jesus. So again, making that connection. Dr. Crawford, I want to turn on the same question to you. What do you remember of the ministry with Pastor as he now, again, is moving into retirement? Can you take us back into those years?
Well, I do remember one particular incident because in a previous podcast, our guest was another one of those guys from that early years at Pan American, Dr. Joe Hernandez. And he reminded me of the migrant community north of Edinburgh. And I was in an associational meeting, and they were talking about places that needed ministry that nobody was serving. And they started talking about this migrant community just a few miles north of the campus, actually. I've been out there in recent years, and there's nothing there that's gone. But they said, we can't start a church there because the people come and go. These are migrants. They move in September, and they move out in April or May, and you can't start a church with those people. The next year, it's a different group of people. And I said, that sounds a whole lot like college students to me. They kind of move in September, and they move out in April or May. So we did an unbelievable thing. We got the church finance office of the BGCT to buy one of those houses. They weren't much. It was just a little old 1-bedroom shack, really. It just wasn't much. But we bought it in the name of the association. And we had live-in missionaries. But the student magazine from Nashville called and said, we've heard about this. We want to come and do a story. Well, we hadn't moved in yet, but they were on their way with a photojournalist. And I had to quickly get some people to move in. And Mickey was one of those guys. They just moved in all of a sudden and acted like they lived there until the story was written. And then it ended up being Joe Hernandez was one of the ones that actually lived out there. But Mickey was ready to go and moved in and played the part and did the ministry while he was there. And he didn't speak to me for several months after that.
You're referring now to my home during college as a shack. It was a 400 square foot home, Dr. Crawford.
Yeah, it was.
Living room, a smaller bedroom, a yet smaller kitchen, and a tiny bathroom for the 2 of us that lived out there. And once a week, some more of the BSU folks would come out there to lull, and we'd have a backyard Bible club, like a mini vacation Bible school. And kids from all over the neighborhood, the migrant children, would show up for our backyard Bible club time. And it gave us an opportunity to play games with them and feed them some snacks, but most of all, to tell them about Jesus. And I was just amazed. I was blown away, having grown up in a Christian home, that here were dozens and dozens of kids showing up that had never heard of things like David and Goliath or Jesus feeding the 5,000, much less that Christ died on the cross for them. And so it gave us the opportunity to tell a lot of people about Jesus in that migrant community. And it was great for me because I didn't have to live in the dorm, but it was an opportunity for ministry that was a piece of those formative years.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Wow. I wasn't expecting that turn in the story, but that's great. And again, for me, as one of those guys that did not grow up in the States and came to the States, precisely, Dr. Crawford, you mentioned earlier of DOM, which you mentioned the name. Obviously, I didn't know him, but it was the DOM of Rio Grande Valley Baptist Association back in 1990, who through him, I was able to get a scholarship to go to a place that used to be called Valley Baptist Academy, which is now VVMEC. And it was through there that I eventually ended up at East Texas Baptist University. But my point that I'm trying to make is simply how the Lord orchestrates and places things. So as a former college student coming from a foreign country, housing was highly appreciated. So I didn't get the experience to get a shack, like that, a 400, square foot home. I was going to the word home. I didn't get that. But the provision and, sustainability of the Lord over these things. We're coming to the end of our podcast. And Pastor, I want to ask you, because many of our listeners and the people who connect to the podcast and the people that actually Dr. Crawford on a monthly basis, shepherds and mentors on his trips down to South Texas through the conferences on spiritual formation and discipleship, they are pastors. Many of them are church planters. Many of them are student pastors. Many of them are middle-aged, kind of in the middle of the journey. I just want to ask you, part of our closing time together, if you have a word for pastors, for those who are launching into student ministry, vocational ministry, those who are thinking about potentially responding to that calling, what would you say after all these years, going back into, once again, Pan Am under the leadership of Dr. Crawford, and then walking through all these years, any word of advice for our brothers and sisters?
Sure. Count on God to sustain you as you run the race so that you can run the whole race. So many of the folks that I came up with fell by the wayside for one reason or another. And if God called you to a ministry, you stay the course, run the race until God leads you out of it. So
that's the concept of perseverance.
Absolutely.
The God who sustains you. So again, I'm reminded of the two sides of the same coin, right? It is the God who sustains you and you're called to persevere. That's a great combination. And once again, thank you for serving the local church. Thank you for being a part of a generation that paved the way for many of us. I'm grateful for my years at First Baptist and FAR. And then listening to you and making the connection this morning is just amazing. Dr. Crawford, any final thoughts as we come to an end?
I was just wondering how long, Mickey, tell me how long do you sustain? I'm 81. I've been sustained a long time.
I'm not sure when through comes about, but I guess when the Lord calls you home may be the right time.
I guess so. I keep seeing you young guys retiring, and I'm thinking, how do you do that?
You're obviously not doing it very well.
I've failed in that one.
Multiple times, I say?
Times. Yeah, I'm on my third one.
We're closing our time together, and again, we were reminded just because of the stories of Beach Reach, and again, we're only a few weeks away from time of the recording from doing that. So, would you guys let me close in prayer and just pray for our student ministries? Pray for the families, the parents that obviously are connected to these experiences. They're going to send their kids to serve and to do ministry for the sake of the kingdom. That may the Lord give them divine appointments, that the grace of God will definitely touch the lives of thousands and hundreds of people. And we can see that work flourishing into the newness of life. So let me close in prayer and then we'll be dismissed. Okay. Father, thank you once again for our conversation this morning. Thank you for the legacy of the gospel. Thank you for parents, grandparents, pastors, organizations like BSM, BSU, Texas Baptist. Thank you for the local church, because those are the places where you have called us from and to. And Father, this morning we consecrate to you the lives of the students, our kids and grandkids, as they continue to serve and as they continue to respond to the call. Father, we pray for safety and protection as the time of the recording, few weeks from spring break, and people will travel across the nation and the world. And Father, would you give us a divine appointment so we can see thy kingdom come and thy will be done. Thank you again for bringing us together this morning. In Jesus' beautiful name, amen. Amen. Pastor, have a great day. Dr. Crawford, always good seeing you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mickey. Say hello to Connie for us.
Will do. Thank you, Dan.
If there was ever a guy that outmarried himself, it's you.
No question.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye. This is episode number 3 of Discipleship. This is a Directives podcast and Dr. Crawford. Dr. Crawford.